Okay, we're good to go. This is the fifth Prism. And how are you, Ed?
Good, yeah. Yeah, good. Went to see the Breeders last night. That was good. So, yeah, we're talking this time about the 9th of June event and also about action cycles, I think. And you also had some ideas about Prism as, evolving the Prism format. Was that right?
Yeah.
So do you want to start with the Prism format? Because that's going to help us with discussing the event and the action cycle.
Okay. The Prism events. Okay, so to be honest, I don't know if they're working that well. I do like the idea of it, but I've had difficulty, as expressed, kind of making shape of this. I've had two bowel movements over the last week. One of them is that I managed to work out an equation that deals with compression of time when somebody recommends something. Okay, so basically, it's not really to do with Prism, it's more to do with the sharing. So when you recommend something, what does that mean? So for example, you listen to a track of music and you think, oh, this is pretty good. So you listen to it again. Because you're listening to it again, it means you're listening to it for double the amount of time that the person that you're going to share it with. Okay, so when you say, have a listen to this, it's 5 minutes long, you're basically saying, I've listened to it for 10 minutes at least. Okay, because of that temporal compression. So if you listen to something 10 times, you're going to say, listen to this, I've listened to it 10 times. Okay, yeah. That temporal compression is what value is. You're basically estimating what value this thing has. So it's very interesting to think that and how that's relating to money as a vector and compression of time and money. And I did some calculations and stuff and worked stuff out in relation to, what is it called? Streaming, the way that people get 6.6p or whatever it is whenever anybody streams anything. And I've related it to that kind of costing structure. And it works out even the minimal amount of what we're suggesting, which is basically 1p when you recommend something, it works out as more. Okay, so, and it's to do with time, money, numbers of people, and all that kind of stuff. So I've got a nice little equation for that, which makes sense mathematically, financially, and so on. But that's a slightly different thing. Sorry, that's
okay. Yeah, no, that's good. That's more like almost like a lit feature, almost.
Yes, it will be related to lit. Yes, okay, so I haven't written that down as a blog post or anything like that. The calculation
just a couple of bits of it. We should move back on to the Prism. But are you saying that because what would be valuable, and this might mesh with that, is a mechanism to share with money without having to do the calculations and the working out who you're sharing to and all the rest of it? Well, you do work out who you're sharing to, but nothing else. So what you're saying is this is a metric in a way for automatically calculating the value of the shares that you're going to do.
Brilliant. All right. Yeah. So basically, if you've listened to something for 10 times and then you hit the share button for whatever reason, you're like, listen to it the 10th time, you're like, oh, it's so good. And when you hit it, you go, right, I'm going to share it with somebody. And what it suggests is, if you're going to share it with one person, it should be about 10p. It should be about 10p because it's so good. Don't you agree? And that's why you're sharing it. You've listened to it 10 times. But if you share it with multiple people, 1p or whatever. But the point is you're adding a certain amount of money commensurate to the amount of time. And that's where most of the people fiddling about with this kind of stuff, trying to estimate how much anything is worth, they're basically measuring how much time you spend on the computer. Isn't that crap? Yeah. So basically, if you're watching a video for 5 minutes, it amounts to this amount of money. If you're reading this article for 7 minutes, and so that's how they're doing it. Everybody that's going in this direction is taking it that way. Whereas I'm saying, no. It plugs into that, but it's more to do with, you could be reading a book. All right. It's not measured by the physical, this thing, virtual communication. Yeah. It's doing absolutely anything. It's like if you spend a certain amount of time doing something or other, and then you recommend it, and that compression, it's things to do with that. It's to do with the relationship, not just how much time have you logged in. Okay, which is crappy algorithm. So That's the idea.
The only thing about that is the measurement of non-physical, non-digital things, and also the measurement of digital things on different platforms, and how would you create that value metric automatically across platforms? Lots of challenges, but it's a great idea.
Well, that's what people are doing. What we're doing is we're saying, no, it's got nothing to do with the online thing. It's to do with your time, your experience, and how you value things. So, I mean, it's just a way to plug into the current systems different ways.
Cool.
And it's just kind of like a suggestion. And the maths works, and I think the money works. So as a business thing, it kind of makes sense.
But do you have to ask yourself at any point consciously, how many times have I watched this thing? How do you collect the data if it's not taken automatically from, say, the digital space that you're in?
Yeah. So for things like that, it is suggesting it. What the current system is just spying on you, and it'll tell you, and this is how much you have to pay.
So it's giving back a bit of that data that it takes from you without you knowing and seeing.
That's what's happening now.
Your own value for the things you're looking at online, which I also like. It's also something that could be attractive as a value add for the lit browser idea, like the future of lit.
Oh.
So if you use the lit browser, you start being able to track everything, your YouTube clicks, blah, blah, blah. And that creates a natural value that then hopefully comes out of your subscription in some way to the people you're sharing it to, and then back to the content creator. Great.
Okay.
Cool idea.
Anyway, so I spent time doing that. The other thing, okay, so regarding Prism, it's a little bit trickier because, so I basically did a deep dive into various stuff that I've done, the action cycles and so on and so forth, and various other things to try and see if I can compile how this would be useful. I've just got such a lack of data. I mean, this is interesting, us having a conversation, but there's actually very little happening for me between the weeks because I paused effectively Equal Squared a month ago. So I've been waiting for the money to come through. So basically I've been doing lots of different other things. Mm-hmm. And there's no money flow to it. There's just a lot of my time. And so there's very little direct experience that I've got of this going, and improve it and work out what it is. So I've had to do basically a thought experiment. Okay, a massive thought experiment. And I'm just going to pass it by you just for a few minutes, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. And basically, okay, here's the question. What happens if so just to get us in the ballpark, right now we have hierarchy, okay? And basically hierarchy is an imagined position that you have in a structure, even though it's a company, and the company doesn't literally have this physical structure. It's got a mental structure that socially we fit into. And usually the person at the bottom is making less money than the person at the top. Okay. And so it's a positional thing. Now, what's important about Prism and everything that we're doing with Equal Squared and everything is to do with time. Okay, it's time. It's how we're organizing ourselves in time. So we're trying to come up with a structure that basically we have 1 hour. That's it. Okay, that's it. That's all you're allowed. Ooh, right, okay, so how do we organize ourselves if we've only got that structure? So the thing about hierarchy is if you put it on its side, as it were, positionally, so that it's in time, it means that the person that is, I don't know if you can do that calculation, but hierarchy, you slap it on its side, so it's effectively in relation to time.
Yeah, carry on.
All right. Well, first of all, what does that do to your head? If you're just going hierarchy, flip over, and you're actually, it's positional, but in time. Okay, so it's to do.
Well, so the thing that immediately sprang to mind was, are you asking me a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it.
Reflection.
The reflection is that immediately comes to mind as a way of familiarizing myself with turning that graph sideways and making it, in a way, putting your CEO on the ground alongside your cleaner and middle management and all that, right? But in time, when you say time, it imagines me walking through and walking past each position. It imagines me addressing each position in the hierarchical order. So I'm walk either two ways. One way is start with the CEO, walk past the CEO, get to senior manager, walk past senior manager, get to administrator, walk past administrator, get to cleaner. Or start with cleaner, go to administrator, go to middle management, senior management, then CEO, right? So that's a kind of like separating it in kind of a way of, I don't know, that's that. I suppose when I say walking past, I mean that's a procedural approach. Like, how do you approach that hierarchy now that it's horizontal, right? But in terms, then maybe you can take over again and go forward with your thoughts as regards how that works as a group. So once you've, there are certain skills that all of those people have, but yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting that you thought of that, and that's to prioritizing. Again, sequentially though. So if you think about that as a hierarchy, right, spatial, but if you go, right, at this moment now, we all exist. You know, the cleaner, the middle management, the CEO, we're all coexisting right now.
Yeah, that's as if mine was taking the idea first of just simply moving the hierarchy horizontal.
Okay, yeah.
A bit weird, and it's not fully formed. There's probably an actual, like, proper thing that I could get to, but I think what you're going for is beyond that anyway. So
yeah, there's another big jump ahead. This is just the ballpark, just to get us in the ballpark, so that you're going, okay. I was interested because that thing that you just prioritized, that's an interesting echo.
I think the reason why I did it is because if you want to actually start by horizontalizing it, you need to create the same. It's to do with the chain, actually. The fact that the cleaner doesn't talk to the CEO.
Okay.
So it's the fact that exists anyway. So that is the mental structure of hierarchy. So if you then remove the gaps between them, you get the group. And that might be what you're talking about.
Well, it's simpler. You've got different angles to it, which is interesting. The simpler bit is that the person that's got the CEO, okay, so if money is a vector, okay, so you've got the person at the top generally has the most money, okay, he's getting the most money. So if you put that in time, it means they've got more money to be able to kind of like decide upon. So you've got a budget. That budget is this amount, right? Whereas the guy that's in charge, the cleaners, has got this amount of budget. And the person who's the actual cleaner has got this amount of money they're making today. Okay. So the point is, it's all these different vectors going into the future, but it does have this kind of depth in time. So the CEO is meant to, rightly in a positional thing, have a best perspective. They're looking within, but they're also looking outside, and hopefully, like the captain of the ship, right at the top, going, okay, I can see where the ship's going. So, but that's just an illusion. That's all metaphoric spatial illusion. What we're saying is, forget about all that. You've got more money, right? What does that mean? It means you can think in time longer. You're thinking about a year ahead, 5 years ahead, whereas the cleaner's thinking about the next hour, right? What am I going to do this hour? Okay. And so you've got all these different people now, but they only have a certain amount of power, money, time to think and to act within. Whereas people that have got a lot more money, budgets, salary, whatever, have a longer period of time to think about. But this is different from the chain, because the chain's going down command. This one is more like, we're all here together. I've got my little vote. You've got your bigger vote. Okay. How are we going to make a decision about how we go forwards? And so it's a similar structure. I mean, it's exactly the same in a way. It's just, it's slightly different because of this money vector idea. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it gets us into this notion, we have an hour now. Okay. So if you have this, network, and we've all got different amounts of money, and we're all kind of going forward in vectors of money, you could think about it as a hierarchy. Some of us have more money than others. You could think that way, but there's no chain of command. You have this meetings and all this kind of stuff. Right. Forget about all that. I'm trying to create this scenario. Okay, I'm going to shorten this down, right? Yeah. So if you do that one thing, where you flip it over and you think about vectors and time, so it's similar-ish structure in terms of some people have longer frames of time reference, right? Right, that's one part of it. The other part of it is...
So let me summarize. That's essentially removing the taboo around resource allocation for each person within, say, a prism, and therefore speaking freely immediately with the manifest, honest knowledge of everyone being involved and committed to the process by the simple fact that they've turned up, right? And the second point being, everyone knows what the budget is and who controls the budget, that budget. And then from that point, from that transparent point about you've created a horizontal hierarchy that you can then talk about honestly and properly. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, to an extent. It's to do with the people turning up at the right time, making decisions about the same things. Yeah. So it's more to do with cycles. So the CEO should really only be making a decision, the CEO equivalent, once every year. Okay, they do their thinking, they do whatever analysis, they engage people, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the year, they go, as far as I can understand, this. Okay, I think this. Okay, guys, listen to it, don't listen to it, but I think that. Okay, and they've had that time. Okay, and so hopefully the reason why they've got that money is because they have been useful in the past for smaller scales of time. And so they've got, oh, that was useful. Da, da, da. And just like in a hierarchy, it's just that instead of a hierarchy position, it's in time and the decisions we're making in time. So it's all to do with cycles and movement in time and different cycles. So the whole thing is different from position and fixed and everything else. It's right. Here's a big jump. Sorry, last bit, but it's actually the most important bit. The big jump is this. This is the thought experiment. What happens if, at some point in the future, we are making a decision globally, okay, involving 1 billion of us? Okay, that's the okay. You're like, what? If there are 1 billion of us, okay, and we're all going right, what vote right now? You know, yes or no? Yes or no? You got 2 buttons, yes and no, and there's 1 billion of us going, and it depends what everybody else does, and we have to get this, let's say, kind of by consensus. Okay, we've got to the skill level where we know we all have to agree one way or another. Okay, so yes, you get to vote, but basically we have to all go one way or the other because of it's an environmental thing with water, and we're all part of it, and it's a big decision, or it's like aliens turn up or something, and we have to make a decision. Do we talk to them? Do we kill them? Talk to them? Kill them.
1 billion people are taking part in this Prism, though. Is that what you're saying?
We'll come back to Prism, what a Prism is. So there's a bit, take the jump, say, at some point in the future, say in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, 50, 100, 1 million years' time, sometime in the future, we actually have the ability to make a decision collectively by consensus, even 1 billion of us. Okay, because it's so important, and we've got the tech and the skills and the know. No, all right, okay, how does that work? Now, if there's 1 billion of us, okay, so it seems to me, okay, that although 1 billion of us could be participating in that thing, and the state of this is that we're listening. It can't be 1 billion of us talking.
Yeah.
All right. So there's 1 billion of us kind of like going, okay, like watching a football game or something, watching and going, right, I'm kind of thinking, listening, and then going to make a decision. So who are we listening to? And there's 10 people. Let's imagine. There's 10 people that we're listening to because for whatever reason, self-selecting, but 10 people that we're going, those are the 10 people because I've voted for somebody else, somebody else.
Notionally, the group has precipitated votes that create that 10 people being the best 10 people that everyone is happy with and bought into. It's like a government elected by these billion people.
Yeah. Right? So of the billion of us watching right now, there's 10 of us that are actually talking or have the ability to talk, as it were, for whatever reason that they've got up to and people are happy with. And there's, 1 billion of us going, okay. And they make the decision. And you think, okay, so how has that happened? All right. And let's call that, I called it the Global Sitting Council. Okay, you've got the global, not the UN position again. You've just got 1 billion of us, right? And there's 10 of us in that council, as it were. Okay, now that's the thought experiment. What happens in the future? We've managed to, we could do this for everything. We could do this for, stuff in the city, slightly less number of people making that decision.
Yeah.
Hundreds of million, 100,000 of us, but there's still only, at any one moment, 10 people going, I think, contributing. And we've all, different of us have different amount of information, blah, 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 blah. But here we are in this hour going to make this decision. Right. Yeah. How do we make this
fluid democracy? And then every cell within that is making their decisions in the same way. And you're about to tell us what that involves.
Well, so the thought experiment, okay, so I haven't got very far, but the thought experiment was simply, if that is the case, and it's called backcasting, you think of an imaginary future where that's possible. You think, but how? How do we organize ourselves?
I like that a lot, yeah. I also think that it's applicable to certain use cases that are interesting to talk about, but we'll not talk about them now.
Okay. You should at least mention them so that at some point or other we go back to it.
Yeah, we could talk about the main one I've got is AI versus CI. So AI, artificial intelligence mediated by a traditional hierarchy versus everyone's right to choose whether they want to be uploaded into the cloud. And it's such a fundamental human right that you shouldn't allow it, blah, blah, blah. So that would require a collective intelligence solution that actually allows a full vote of everyone in the world, including people who are not educated and all the rest of it.
Right.
you know, rather than say, oh, they're not educated, so they don't matter, or whatever.
That's right.
So that's the big end. I suppose that's the one use case that's useful as a thought experiment and could actually be useful in practical, real terms.
Oh yeah, look, everything I think, although it's a thought experiment and everything else, I go, well, look, it's actually, I'm trying to think practically here, okay? Although it appears to be, just a willy-washy idea, it's not. Because, okay,
so in that spirit, like, it works at every level, and let's say we reduced it to the city, like 100,000 people. It's the same either way, but the point is the rhetoric around it, which we've covered in other prisms, doesn't matter as long as people watch what we're talking about and fully watch it rather than switching off. And
that's right, because they've got vested interest, they've got their money, they've got their time, and they're going to make a decision. Okay, and that, okay, it's all to do, and it's like there's various factors that collected together to do with how reflective meetings work in therapy, how Quakers work, to do with listening, and my experience with kids and stuff. So, but anyway, that's a massive thought experiment. Now, if you backcast is if you've got this future event, so an equivalent is, oh, we're living in peace, or the environmental thing's been solved. Okay, how? And then you have to backcast. Well, for that to have happened, we must have solved this, like the water melting. We must have solved this. The Swedes did it, and the Norwegians did it for the environment and acid rain falling 30 years ago. It's called backcasting. They look into the future and say, if at this point this has occurred, how did that happen? You keep going backwards. So eventually what happens, if you think this, you think, right, at some point or other, there's 10 people in a council, 10 people making a decision or informing anybody else who's interested. They might be making a decision about money. They might be given the executive powers, representing others. I don't like representation. Or they might be embodying the fact that people have given them money, all right, to make that decision. Or there are all these people listening. Okay, it doesn't really matter which one of those it is right now, but you've got 10 people. The question is, what happens? Okay, and this is a rolling meeting. At any one moment in time, there is this council, okay, globally. 24 hours, 7 days a week, 265, right? 24/7, whatever, 365, whatever you want to call it, continuously, which means that during the day, somebody's there for an hour or maybe a few, and then they drop out, because it's too late, and then it passes to the next person. So is it possible to convene a global sitting council right now?
Yeah. Okay. The last 24/7, did you say?
That lasts 365 days a year.
So every day for 1 hour, or
every moment there is a sitting council. That's right now, for example, the thought experiment is, right now, there's a bunch of people, 10 of us, okay, making decisions about, big global thing, small thing, whatever it is. There's 10 of us right now, this hour. That's what we're trying to say, this hour. We just parked in to go, okay then, this is my prism, this is my 1 hour that I'm going to take part in something or other, all right? But we're not part of that 10 that's making a decision, let's say, about, I don't know, loads of money for whatever reason, the AI.
Because like the background is, like you said, there's many ways it could be got there, but if you envision roughly, it's like an online community that's kind of a massive, like, decision orientated online community. And there are websites that do this really well, by the way.
Okay, wait. Before you say that, that's what we've got right now. We've got billions of us on the internet right now.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're all constrained by the companies and organizations we're in.
Yeah.
Right. So if a kid, for example, says, Rick, I would really like, £2,000 to do something or other. A college guy coming out of college, wants to go to uni, may not, needs 2,000 quid. How does he get that? Oh, well, so it's organization. Does that organization, okay. Whereas imagine there's a network, okay, and basically says, right, I really think, right, 2,000, and then he basically just asks for it. He goes to the collective, asks for it, and they go, and eventually they're talking to somebody and saying, okay, so what's it for? Okay, and there's a collection of people, and they make a decision, and they get it, somebody else gets it, and there's a decision that's made. And that was it. That's what they did in that hour. Okay? How can we process that? Well, right now it's hierarchies, companies. What we're saying is, if we have a structure that allows us to filter people and money flow right now, okay, right now isn't who's right now here with the money, what we're trying to do. How do we decide where that money goes in an hour? Okay, and that's a continuous hour as we go through time.
Yeah.
Okay? So okay, so that's, okay, so I got a little bit further than that, and I said, if there is, imagine there's just 10. If you calculate that each of them is getting paid £10 an hour, it's 0.7 million. No, 876,000 pounds a year to convene this global sitting council where there's 10 people sitting 24/7, 365, every hour somebody is being paid, 10 people are in this council. It's going to cost us, all of us, 0.876 million, all right, to have that structure, to pay for that structure for those people. That's it, all right? And let's say they could be making a decision for £100 or £1,000 in that hour. So they get paid £10 to make a decision about 100 or 1,000.
So they each get paid £10 to participate in that hour, a living
get
wage.
Paid.
Yeah.
Okay, basically your time, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In our current understanding. So even there's lots of ways of kind of like going, okay, how can this work? And, even traditionally, right, that's the amount of money. Mm-hmm. And then you start thinking, okay, so there's council of 10, they made a decision, then the person disappears. Who comes in? And there might be 2 people, there might be a queue, there might be 40 people. That process of sorting and filtering people so that you end up in that council is what Prism is. Okay, it's the process by which we can self-select so that at any cycle, any prism, at any scale, we can go, right, so what is the decision we have to make? So it's basically, I'm trying to suggest that the prism is the microform of a continuous system that has at that scale, okay? Yeah. 1 billion of us, all right, doing this decisioning process thing with no company structures. All we've got is a little bit of cash, a little bit of time, we have to make decisions. Okay, how do we self-sort, self-organize such that we can induce that level? So the solution has to have that level of scalability, let's call it, okay? Yeah. If we've got it right.
So what you're saying is, like, the justifications for me, it's important to say why you need the global council. It's because there are problems of that scale that without coordination will never be fixed, right?
That's exactly right. And the UN is not equipped to do it, and companies are not equipped to deal with it.
But okay, so I agree with that notionally, and I think everyone's thought about this in childhood, about like world peace and like some kind of benevolent government that's like
that's right,
democratically like fucking chosen through Reddit or whatever. But yeah, actually the Prism is proving good because it's embodied to as much as possible remotely. We're sitting here live with bodies here and stuff, rather than just like the black and white text, which we know leads to kind of massive.
There cannot be any you cannot externalize it. There's no externalization. So there's basic mechanics to it. You cannot externalize it into a bunch of words and anything else. It's basically the structure by which we gather. It's as simple as that. Okay. And then when we gather, what's the decision we make? There might be lots of information, and we might have things that's why the individual wants to be there, and presumably why they're qualified is because they actually have got a good bead on it, some of them. Some of them have got a lot of knowledge about it, and other people have got slightly different ways of thinking about it that doesn't involve knowledge, but more spiritual or more understanding of systems or whatever it is. So that the point is there's no objectification, absolutely, without a shadow of doubt. You cannot have any externalization. All we've got, right? So the things we've got are things like the money that you've got on the table. Yeah. What's the money that I've got on the table that other people have given me? That I'm saying, right, I've got this amount, and we have to decide. And there's 10 of us, and we've all got these amounts. How do we decide what to do? And that's, I think, do you see the direction of all this thinking is that basically right now we should have a certain amount of money on the table, right? You bringing some, I'm bringing some, and we're saying, right, what are we doing this week with this money? Okay, that. And do we need to have consensus? And what's that state of consensus? Is it 100%? Both of us have to agree. Or can we say, okay, you're going to do that with it, I'm going to do this with it. Okay, fine. And those rules are set before you enter into the prism. Okay, the money, and the decision parameters. All right, that kind of thing, and that's it, really. So you talk a little bit about the past if you need to, but basically you've only got an hour, so you can't talk about the past too much, as I've done.
Yeah.
And then we've got the future. What are we going to do? And the decision about why we are together or what decision we've got to make. This is a bit tricky because it's a regular thing. It's just us two. But that's the kind of level of thinking I've been thinking. It's a little bit out there, very out there, I'd say. But it's the best I can do right now.
I like it. I think, I mean, for example, let's bring it down to this level, but also admit that there are things bigger than just this prism that need to be dealt with. Let's say there was another one prism happening every Monday at 10, and this is Tuesday at 10, and two other people are having a prism on Monday at 10, and they know we're doing our prism, and they want to say, they realize that we could help them do something that they think that we would want to do as well. Then you can link up and do your own prism or whatever and set up a new weekly prism in your own way. But the good thing about it is you can jump between, you can jump out. Every prism is only as strong as its, as its participants. So if the purpose of it ends, then the prism ends essentially. And likewise, if momentum is gained, it might be that there are 10 prisms and they meet every once a month. There's a sort of central prism, but that still fits in with your structure, because there could still be up at the top there, 24/7 council going on.
That's the idea.
This really interesting. Sorry, they did a really interesting thing in the Fringe, which was the reading of the Iraq, the summary. What was it called? Lord somebody's summary of the Gulf War and
okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they did that at the Fringe for, I think, 3 or 4 days, reading back to back. People read like half an hour each constantly for back to back overnight until like 5 a.m. I think it might have even been 24 hours. I can't remember. But it's that kind of idea. It's like my partner did it, and she felt there was a sort of real good vibe of like, this is really meaningful, important, and it needs to be out there. And it's a simple way of achieving it. People are giving their time, blah, blah, blah. And what all this is doing is people giving their time and their money and realizing this free exchange, if we also backed it with our money, rather than separating our money to buy washing up liquid from Unilever.
That's exactly right.
Then you'd see change. Yeah, I see that. So, but the only thing I would guard against is the Ponzi idea. And the Ponzi thing comes up all the time, but actually that's how everything works. That's like, in a way, every thing that's networked, any product that's networked could be accused of being a Ponzi scheme.
I think our current economy, the current traditional one, is basically a disguised Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
And Mr. Ponzi exploited that. And it's
but let's not go too into that, because I'm interested in applying that criticism to this, because the only thing I can see is, like, you want to get away from meetings, and it's really important that prisms are there for action and not meetings. But if you create a whole set of prisms that are meetings and you expand that, you're doing just what these people do, these motivational speakers who go like, oh, download my book to learn how to motivationally speak to people. It's like self-referential, and in a way you can understand the value of it, but in another way, if everyone just becomes a motivational speaker,
nothing gets done. That's right.
So, like,
I hate motivational speakers. I think they're all pants. Sorry.
Well, I don't know. There's some value there, but
of course there is value. There's value in everything that everybody does, of course.
But yeah. So I'm just saying, like, if you're doing that, and the end point ends up being, it's like political. Ultimately, it ends up being, I need to be voted. Personally speaking, you're sitting back excited, maybe innocently. You're sitting there excited, going, "Wow, I could take part in this prism, and if people like my ideas, I might be voted up into the next level of prism."
That's right.
But suddenly, you're like, actually, people start ambitiously trying to get there.
That's right.
And what you're trying to do is solve things at your own level rather than get up to the top level.
Yes.
And hopefully the people who are best at doing that, like you say, the CEO, the ideal CEO, of which how many of these actually exist, the people who have actually done a granular piece of work at the shop floor, and gradually got better and self-organized, that's pretty rare, basically.
Yes.
It's things like previous money from their families, etc., that bring them to where they are.
Yeah. What we're suggesting is that
there's also entrepreneurialism. So what I'm talking about is, have you got a vision for how action takes place?
Sorry. So I see that thing of people learning can happen in that hour or very short time. So somebody, right, there's a bunch of people deciding what to do with the icebergs or something or other. All right, there's a bunch of people putting in a pound, and it could be that a kid, at school, has come up with this idea, and when they gather with a group of other people, they go, "Well, that's a good idea. No, go forward to that idea." Kids like, "Oh, okay," and they go forward, and within a period of time, there they are, with 100 million money going through them. But the only reason that they're there is because they had this idea. They don't have the skills to execute it, but they've got the idea. And other people go, actually, I think that's possible. All right, yeah, go forwards with it. And they're empowered. And so the person that's there might not have all the skills and experience, but they've got something. And because they're kind of catching this wave, and they are innocent in a certain form, it's just that the quality of what they're bringing is the thing that's valuable. And people have aligned to that possibility. It's possible. I mean, this is way too abstract, way too much talk. Okay. Yeah. So, but it's along that line. I'm going to produce something, and even today I was like, oh god, these prisms. I'm like, right, but it's along lines like this. Okay, and we don't have enough experience. Okay, we're just not quite plugging in the elements for it to become something useful. So I'm going to continue doing them. Because these thoughts and formulations are occurring, but in terms of actual practical outcome, I'm still a bit like apart from us producing stuff. So,
well, this is the thing. So I think that in a way, like, I think that should be a priority, not like. I think that's the first thing. Like it's
I know, but we need to have data. We need to have tried things out,
but we're about to. I mean, on the 9th of June, like patience-wise, I understand the financial thing for anyone trying to.
Look, I'm sitting here. I've spent that amount of time thinking about this, and the other stuff I've been doing is just writing fiction, fantasy, just writing, stories. Because I'm like, I'm not going to participate in this ridiculous economic, okay? Mm-hmm. And so I'm happy doing what it is that I'm doing. But regarding this prism, just because there's lack of data, as it were, I can't quite formulate it. So we need to do more experiments. So I think we have to put in a bit of cash. When we get together, we say, right, let's try this. And it's just us two. I don't know how much we're going to learn from it.
So let's say we could potentially put in like a tenner each for every prism we've done so far and do that every week from now on.
Things like that. And if we don't use it, if we can't think of the thing to use the money, it rolls forwards. Okay. Yeah. So paying forwards for the next. And everybody that participates, we say, oh, we'll invite them, use some of the cash. And then they take part. And if they want to, they can match it with their money. And they can like leave it to go forwards or then take part in the decision. I actually went back to MTTP, Money Time Trust Protocol. That was the original thing with Eco Squared. And I had some of these thoughts before back then. That's what I was analyzing. And that one worked by when you invite somebody to something, they equal it. But the decision at the beginning is it's going to go their way. The money's going to go their way. So if I invited you to a meeting for £10, you bring a tenner. We have the meeting, and the agreement at the beginning is it's going to go your way. At the end, both. So effectively paying you 10 quid. But during that hour, there is the 10 quid each. And if you can extend that to, say, 100,000 a year, I'm inviting somebody to do this thing. They bring their 100,000. We do stuff. We get to use that money during the year. All right. And if that works and everything else, based on the structures, it means that money should leave to that person. Okay. And the failure state of the NTTP was that they're going to leave with the money they came with. Okay. So there's a very interesting thing called the NTTP.
I like that. And I think that's a good metric, presuming that, if they're taking 100 grand off to do what they want to do, not what you want to do, on the basis that you invited them.
Yes, that's exactly how, honestly, the MTTP I thought was the solution. All right. I've had to unpick that, come up with Eco Squared. But the MTTP creates this very interesting structure that hasn't been tested. Okay.
Yeah. I also think that
we've tried. And I was even thinking with projects to change it so that if you invite somebody with a project and they check it out and they want to join, they actually do have to put in the cash. All right. Yeah, no, so I was thinking of changing the actual current system with future projects to just do that. So
I think that's fair enough, because it gets, like you say, the money flow comes like initially in this startup phase. You've been, your videos are like, you pay someone a tenner to come to a meeting because their time is valuable, but you're not asking for the tenner for yourself. Instead, you're changing it by getting both people to engage in money flow, but you're still, the same result is happening at the end.
Right. Yeah.
So that's quite good. That's quite important to get people into into that idea of putting money where their mouth is, essentially. That's all this whole thing is, actually.
Yeah.
It's like a very pure way of putting money where your mouth is. But yeah, the prisms are good because this is action, like words are action. And these kind of things are, well, no, because I mean, like we're about to decide to put money behind these conversations in that way.
That's true. That's true. But I would like to have the way that Prism is measured is the effects before and after, and what happens over the week. And then you say, right, that was a useful Prism last week.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that this happened is useful. So I was able to use the money for this and the next thing. Okay, great. Now, what are we going to do for next week? So next week, let's go for a tenner. I don't know if I can afford a tenner every week, actually. If I fall off the cliff, which is dated for June, end of June, then I might not have it. But I should have a tenner a week for this month. Beyond that, it's going to get very difficult.
We could start with £1 a week.
That's true. But then it doesn't. The tenner makes some sense just because after a few weeks we haven't decided what to do with it. They'll have a bit, and we can invite people. So, for example, Pete would have taken part. He would have left with more money and stuff. He would be like, "Oh, that kind of worked." And there's a couple of other people. There's this guy called Dylan, which I'd like to invite. Once we get up to some system that actually I go, "Oh, this is interesting."
Okay. Well, I'm sorry to cut, like to be cutting, especially when I waffle on so much at other points. But I feel like we've got the event. The event is a potential high outcome event, right?
Yeah.
That involves action cycles. And Prism, for me, like we've talked about this on Trello already, but Prism is in some senses a microcosm of an action cycle, in some senses. But it's at the moment it's a conversation just between you and me, and it could be that Prisms quite often begin that way, and then those two people or one representative, well, not representative, those two people maybe decide to join another Prism, another like-minded Prism, etc. Like we've been talking about, tree structures and stuff like that. With money flow, all good. Brilliant idea. But let's get back to the structure of the Prism, because let's use it as a way to finalize ideas for the event. So my feeling...
Sorry about that. That was only meant to be about 20 minutes, half an hour max. And
that's cool. The other thing is that's good is keeping to the hour format is good. And we run over quite a lot, and that's usually my fault. But I this time have a hard deadline at 11, so it'll be a good test because I've got someone moving into a studio at 11. So, right. So, but my point is, so let's say we've got 5 minutes is left. First 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you about my idea for action cycle. Then maybe we talk about how the Prism affects, like a general standard agenda for a Prism, even though it's not a standard agenda, right? And then the third one is critiquing, using that a bit of Prism, kind of new Prism rules from that 5 minutes, critique my idea and change it and come to an outcome about what we're going to do on the 9th. So that's 15 minutes of work. You ready?
Okay, let's do it. Remember, we do have next week as well, don't we?
Yeah, we've got next week as well, absolutely. But I need to be able to...
listening. I'm in listening mode now.
Right, cool. So we talked last week about doing one action cycle, and you were like quite up for doing one action cycle, but I think we need 3. And they go like this. So it's about community engagement in a studio. We're a studio that's been lucky enough to get a disused space in Muir House, but our relationship with the local community and another arts organization next door is really important. And we don't want to ignore it and just be like an insular art institution, even though we're going to be moving around every couple of years, finding a new disused space. And that's actually what we're making our business model about. How do we do that? With minimum friction, how do we move our community around, etc. Right? Nomadic arts community for the sake of affordable studios. That's what we are, right? So to get the local community involved, I thought we could do an action cycle. And the 3 action cycles I think we should do are action cycle with horizontal people, that's local people, right? Action cycle with only hierarchical people, that's leaders within this arts institution and the one next door, and other local community organizations that have hierarchy in order to function, right? Mm-hmm. Then the third action cycle is, or it could even be a directed cycle, but it's probably It could be a directed cycle of the outcomes of those first two, but basically it's joining the two. So you've got the leaders and the horizontal people in one room, and then hopefully seeing the benefits of how action cycle flattens that hierarchy and actually gets the genuine needs of the community so insofar as they want to do anything, you know, gets those needs to be elicited, even if that's like, it means just don't worry, we don't need you, just keep doing your thing and you'll leave in 2 years time. Or yeah, it would be great to have a little shop front, like to sell organic produce rather than shite from a supermarket. Okay, so the 3 action cycles, one with the horizontal, one with the vertical, and one with the horizontal and the vertical together. What do you think?
Okay, you're using language in a slightly different way. I'm not a language person. I'm interested in the structure. And so you're using these words in a slightly different way. And I'm trying to describe the structure. And so you're using it in a slightly different way. So I go, right, forgetting about the language. And I think that causes me confusion, might cause other people if we're using the words in different ways. But doing one with local, I'm happy to do that. Take part in a local action cycle. Doing it with organizational people. Okay, I say, fine, let's do it with a bunch of organizational people. Let's do that. And then do one with kind of combined, self-selecting, whatever it is the people want. I say, fine. Okay, right. So basically for me, it's just a diagonal, all right? It's just a bunch of people. That's it. It's just a bunch of people. We don't have any money flow, another group. Right, we don't have any money flow, we've just got a bunch of people. Fine. And then we've got another group. Okay. And it's by, you sorted them in a certain way. And I'm like, fine. So we could talk about that. I'll have a think about it. But basically, you just want to do 3 action cycles. You're inviting 2 different groups, and then self-selecting, you choosing, or whatever it is.
Fine. Brilliant. Because that's brilliant. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's 5 minutes, and we could go back into Prism because it leads in well, because these 3 action cycles would be interrelated in the same sort of way that one prism might relate to another prism, and those 2 prisms might come together, for example, you know, and do something else, you know. So I'm not saying it is the same. It's just in my mind, a lot of things have analogies where they're not necessarily there, right? That's how my
now I see. I respect how you operate and how you work. So I think kind of like almost mathematically and engineering wise, kind of, and you think through associations, boundarylessness, and a lot of crossover. You do a lot of crossover.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sorry about that.
No. Super rational.
I think it's
that clarified it. That link to super rationality regarding prisoner's dilemma. I went. That's it.
So if we do that, like the money flow we can do, but let's talk about that in the last 5 minutes, because we need to embark on our Prism format for 5 minutes.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be perfect, but if we can get that in 5 minutes, it's a working model. And then next week we can debrief and change it and spend longer maybe.
Yeah, of course.
So what do you suggest within this, the overall, you've got the billion at the top, and then at the bottom and the beginning, we've got you and me, right? So what do we do in our hour? I think that I like the kind of action cycle, consensus, commitment, and achievement, celebration of achievement. Okay, and that's consensus in an hour, commitment in an hour, and in 1 week you've done the shit you said you were going to do, and you celebrate.
Yeah.
Right. So can we translate that into a Prism? Can that just be the way a Prism works, but it's just smaller number of people? Or
you see, I haven't been able to do that. You jumped on it and you tried to use it. Because of the action cycle is like an embodied thing in the real world. And has that bandwidth, and it fits for that. Because of the fact it's just us 2, or it's a bunch of people maybe collecting on a Prism. It just doesn't quite.
The weeks feel like
you're doing lots of different things, and I'm doing lots of different things.
They come quickly, but but you can achieve things that you're doing in those other things that affect an outcome for this.
Yeah, that's it. The idea is that I've got my things, you've got your things, but we should be able to, and the objective of the Prism is to go, wait a minute, we can, look, there are similar things here that we can do this week. Oh, really? That's what's important. It's like, I'm going to be doing and somebody else going, well, I'm trying to do and we should be aware of what these things are.
Yeah.
And we should be isolating. The R is meant to be like, oh, wait a minute, those things are similar. Can we do this? And either a new thing pops out of it or a combined thing pops out of it.
Like Lit, for example, the Lit app is already that kind of common ground.
We did that. We did that in a week.
Well, but your prevailing like ambience is this idea of impatience and that we're getting nothing done, but actually like conceived some quite good stuff. It's more about what to spend the time on. And I think this is quite a good moment to examine that, because we've got an event coming up that feeds into a lot of things. It's a chance to do the action cycle practically in reality. Could talk about money flow, but not in this 5 minutes. Use that in the last 5 minutes. So the conversation itself needs to be quite primary, I think, in Prisms, because it involves reflection. It involves sharing stuff you've read on the internet and books and stuff. It's knowledge exchange. It's valuable in many ways, but practically speaking, like some things you can't do whilst talking in a conversation. So things have to happen on Trello afterwards.
No, look, I fail with the Prism thing because I'm relating to what I did. It takes too long to talk about the past. Takes too long. It's just that this one happens to be about the Prism, so I kind of think, oh, okay, we're allowed to talk about that. But it's that's what I'm trying to do with the Prism. I'm trying to do this thing based on the Prism. So that's okay for next week. Are you trying to? Okay, so for next week, I'm going to continue thinking about this Prism thing and see if I can nail something down, which is useful.
Think about what I'm saying as well about this, like action and how that fits into a Prism. Whether it's something that is just a short amount of time at the end that you sit back at 50 minutes and you go, right, we've got 10 minutes to just consolidate what we're actually doing and maybe even write it down in that 10 minutes. Or, or you can have a fluid reflection. You have 3 sections, but you can change the 20 minutes this week on reflection. If you've just done something great the week before, you just spend 40 minutes on reflection and celebration and only 20 minutes planning the next Prism. It's very fluid, but like it's more about having, eternal truth as far as the structure of things, like 2 or 3 things, a number of things that's manageable that you can hold in your head after the Prism. Maybe you don't even need to write anything down. It's like a small enough number of actions or sections or whatever that it's easy to do, and it's pleasurable and enjoyable as a processing mechanism as well as an action mechanism.
Okay, so we can try to do that next week, which is 20 minutes reflection, 20 minutes looking at the future, 20 minutes effectively making a decision. We could try and do that. I like the idea of the consensus idea. Do we need to have a certain amount of money as well? So I'm happy to put in £10 for next week. And if you can come up with the idea. Also this idea that you stick up a finger to basically interrupt somebody and you put up a hand to go, no, you gotta stop.
Yeah, that's good. I think those 2 are great. Those 2 are good signals. And then I'm going to cut you off because I've got 3 minutes and the guy's outside. However, 3 minutes is good. 3 minutes. It's the question of reaction cycles next week, and we've got. I think this kind of pushing and railroading that I'm doing is only happens when the Prism is not going great, but we don't even know what a Prism is yet. But anyway,
absolutely. Time. We all have to.
It's good to fit it in.
Stopped me earlier. I said, David, no, we're doing that.
2 minutes. Right?
Absolutely essential. Time is it. There's no excuse.
So 2 minutes on, because this is something that I need to promote before next week. It's about monetizing the actual event and how do we get people to bring money? How much money do we get them to bring? This is stuff we could do on Trello after this meeting, but we need to decide. We should try and get money flow as part of this. Maybe like a tenner of each person. I was thinking about doing tickets, for example, to the event that includes that money flow, as in the ticket is that money flow. That's one a good way of doing a supermarket for ideas event is about changing the economics straight off. So I think we should get everyone maybe paying when it was going to previously be a free event. We can get people paying, and then out of it, they get something of value to them, hopefully. So we might have to take that off Trello, but off Zoom. But what do you think? Do you think that's good?
Yeah. It's to do with whether you want to do the traditional, buy a ticket kind of scenario, or we're doing 3 Co² which is basically somebody's inviting you to, and here's the money.
I think we can do that. I think we could do that. The only issue with that is them getting the money out. But you said that you can manually give people money
Yeah.
or create a project, because the credit system, you can't just easily cash it out of your app yet, because that's a lot of extra tech, which
Exactly.
we all know that. So that kind of one-way thing, it seems to be a facet of the way capital travels in the world.
Okay. Yeah, we probably won't be able to do that. But yeah, I like the idea of manually, bring a tenner, bring a pound.
Yeah, put it on the table almost.
That's right. We're not. Are you thinking about actually taking the cash, or are they just going to be using the cash during the thing?
I think they should use it. I mean, use it to do something, but obviously.
So say, bring a pound, bring a tenner.
Yeah, the charity will.
You may not use it. You will decide what to do with it.
Yeah, exactly. And the charity will benefit from the project in as much as it's to do with the priorities of the groups that meet. And that's fulfilling the charity's aims. So,
and we can also try it where you have a mix. So somebody's got a penny, somebody's got 10p, somebody's got a pound, and it's like fine. Or it has to be a minimal buy-in. We have to decide on that.
A different rate for the locals, but we'll see.
Exactly.
That's a whole other ball game,
exactly
worth talking about. But let's do that on Trello.
Let's do it on Trello. I will assist in any shape or form, being able to publicize it. I will, supply any materials or anything.
But yeah, I think we should try and use Eco². Yeah, let's try and use Eco², and then hopefully the money will mostly be one lump for one particular project that everyone agrees with, something like that.
That would be the ideal if they manage to reach that. But the money shouldn't be leaving their account unless that happens. So.
Yeah. But when you say bringing money along, physical money is quite cool. It's a bit like Monopoly.
That's an interesting idea. We could at the door exchange
it's like a board game. It's a board game.
Monopoly money credits. That's not a bad idea, actually.
Instead of post-it notes on the wall, you've got your tenner on the wall with with what you want to get out of it written on the tenner. Anyway, I've got to go, man. That's great. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You should have stopped me earlier. Okay. All right. Have a good week.
We can chat as well.
Yeah. So. No, we'll chat again. But Prism over.
Yes.
Off you go. Ciao.
Ciao.